Let's podcast alongside Joe Giglio. I'm Joe Ovies. I would say, Joe, that game 3 between the New Jersey Devils and the Carolina Hurricanes was cliche in its result, like the actual result, a loss, a home win for a good team that was going to bounce back. It was just the way the game went that was very, very strange and bizarre and kind of leaves you maybe optimistic about the Carolina Hurricanes heading into game 4.
No, it didn't bother me at all. That was a classic. You lost the first 2 games on the road. You're coming back home. Man, if you don't have your fastball in game 3, you're in big, big trouble. I do think the Devils are a talented team. They're a young team. I'm going to be honest with you, Joe. When I saw the younger Hughes brother in the press box in Raleigh in the first 2 games, I was kind of like, hey, that's pretty good for the Canes. We've talked before about how Teuvo Teravainen might unlock the best in Sebastian Aho. I suggest perhaps Jack Hughes had a little bit of jump. And I get it. His brother is even younger than he is, just cutting his teeth. But you saw a little bit of juice that he added to their lineup. And then, of course, the classic, Joe, as we've talked about a lot, when you have Jordan Staal, and if you're just a basketball fan, I've had some people reach out to me on Twitter. Hey, man, I'm still trying to figure out this hockey thing. Well, right. Jordan Staal is your lockdown defender. He is your Gary Payton for people of our age, right? Your Theo Pinson, if you will, your Leaky Black. And when Rod Brind'Amour has that last change on home ice, he can match Staal up with Hughes. Well, look at that. He didn't have the match. And Jack Hughes literally had a hand in the first 2 goals of the game to get the Devils off and running with those first 2 goals of the game. 3-0 by the end of the first period. The only real glimmer, Joe, was the back-to-back shorties there that Staal and Jarvis had there in the third period. But then I wanted to clip it, and maybe I still will for Wednesday's show, of Rod's reaction to the 5-on-3 call. The one on Slavin. Like, of all the people you're going to call a penalty on Jacob Slavin, that was peak Rod reaction.
So we'll get into a little bit more with Eric Cole, former Carolina Hurricane, in just a few. We'll get into some goalie stuff as well, because I love talking about the goalies and some other things that we'll get to Hey Joe questions, and Greg Wyshynski of ESPN is going to drop on by and a story and how the house always wins. And apparently, according to Giglio, I do have a new favorite golfer in the world. So we'll have to get around to that. All right. You mentioned Rod Brind'Amour. After the game, Rod was very blunt. They were not
good. Real good. I don't know what else to tell you. I've never seen us play like that. So, but I give the credit to the other team. I mean, they were on it. They were dialed in, and then, like I said, gave up a couple, and one, we'd like to have back for sure. The shorthand one, that was kind of the backbreaker there. Like that can't happen, but and then some weird things the rest of the game where, at the end of the day, we just weren't good enough.
At the end of the day, we were just not good enough. Classic Rod Brind'Amour after the game. Here's Jordan Staal on, the whole, you go back for game 3, you're going to have a level of expectation from the team that's desperate. He didn't like the way that they responded.
We talked about, we knew they were coming. So we looked surprised. We shouldn't have been, but I think we started to kind of settle in the game a little bit, and then just everyone was just kind of just a little off and sloppy with the puck, slow on our skates and slow on our forecheck, and just kind of just a little bit, a couple inches off here and there, and give them credit, they battled hard and they won all the puck battles, especially early, and they played a little freer once they were up, obviously, and that's their style and that's their game that we don't want to play.
So that's Jordan Staal after the game and how the team came out for game 3. Here's the thing, Joe. In a weird sort of way, you look at the final score and you just go, just flush that one, right? It's the classic, burn the tape, don't think about it. It's easier to move on from that because you didn't have it. But I don't get that sense from the Canes coming out of this game. I feel like the tenor of the game changes because they hit the post 3 freaking times, right? Despite the fact that Freddie Anderson was not good early on and they have to go to Peter Kochetkov, they still found ways to make this thing interesting. I think it got down to 7-4, and you're thinking, I mean, stranger things have happened, right? And of course, we got that interference call that Brendan Moore was not really happy about. All this is to say is that I'm not going to read too much into this for the classic reasons why you wouldn't read into a blowout game in a game 3 with a desperate team being at home. I would simply say that clearly New Jersey's goaltending is still a problem. All right. It is still a problem. Whether it was the young guy with Schmidt, who got run out on Friday night at PNC Arena, going back to the vet in Vanasek, but it wasn't like he was all that great either in a game that should have been pretty easy for them. I like the way the Canes fought, and I like the fact that it clearly proved that they can still take advantage of their weak goaltending.
Yeah, it's 7-2. They get the 2 shorthanded goals, and you're going, now wait a second. This is not a team that rolled over, and they're never going to. That's not Rod's style. Again, we went into this playoffs, and I said to you, the difference between teams 1 through 15, and here's where I was wrong, right? I said to you, the difference between teams 1 through 15 isn't that great. Now, the last team in, I thought, was the Islanders. I didn't think they were that good. But look at what Florida has done. Look what Florida continues to do. Seattle on the other side of the river, a second-year team that is, basically had no business beating the Avalanche, but that wasn't even really that close of a series. They dominated last year's Stanley Cup champions. So the difference between these teams is just not that great, all of these teams.
Yeah.
So it comes down to how good is your goaltending, how good is your power play, how good are your best players? Are your best players your best players? And that's where I thought Hughes yesterday asserted his authority, announced his presence. The 2 early goals, sets up the first from behind the net from Gretzky's office there, and then scores the second. That's what you need out of your best players, and they got it. And it wasn't just a one-person game. To get to the goalies, if you'd like to transition to the goalies, Freddie obviously wasn't great. He wasn't sharp.
No.
But I thought yesterday, the Devils were able to run with Rod. That's their game. They want to run with you. I like the Canes' chances against any team that wants to run with them, particularly now that Colorado is gone. Colorado would have been the one team I would have said, okay, they can probably lace them up and run with the Canes, get up down the ice. I do not think the Devils ultimately will over the course of a best-of-7 series.
Oh, gee.
All right, so in the NHL, you have fights. I mean, we saw Eric Holla get into a fight. Would that be pest control, Joe? Taking care
Eric
of Holla,
Holla.
He's very much a pest. It is what it is, right?
Yeah, and do you know who can get rid of pests? Our very first OG sponsor, Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority. Check them out, bugsbite.com. You're going to go to bugsbite.com. They're going to ask you to enter your zip code. They're going to find you the best Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority for you. Check them out on Twitter. It's No Mosquito NC. 919-807-1951 is the number, Joe. All the ways, Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority, ants, termites. I don't know about you, particularly this time of the year with ants. And I'll say this about Hayes Lancaster, who runs Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority. There are so many different services that they have. I had termites 2 or 3 years ago, and I'm sitting here going, how in the world did I get, because of the firewood during the pandemic. Right. And his guy comes in and he's looking around my house because I got ants, I got termites. He's like, Joe, you got to get rid of this firewood, or at least put it way, way, way behind your house.
Yeah.
So ants, termites, anything underneath your house, crawl space, mildew, mold, you name it, they do it. Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority. Check them out. Bugsbite.com.
And I use Mosquito Authority. You talk about the firewood and the termites. Where I live, it's down in the holler. There's a lot of moisture. I got a creek running in the background. There's a lot of mosquitoes. So they've already started the process. They've come out the last 2 months, I think it is, to get ready for the summer because we spend a lot of time outside. And with Mosquito Authority and their pest control solutions with that, it's pretty awesome. So again, shout out to Pest Authority and Mosquito Authority. Do we have a hashtag yet? Is it Bang Bang Joe Gang when you join? The group?
So,
we gotta make that happen.
I love our tweet today. I had young Tanner, our intern, our first intern, create a signed, tweet, because that's what all the kids do these days. And
Of
Tanner's
course.
a
Of
senior at
course.
Garner High School. And he goes, well, do you have a hashtag? I'm like, I do not have a hashtag. I just want the the over the top signed tweet. Oh, you need a hashtag. And he comes and he says, bang, bang, Joe gang. And I'm like,
I like that.
well, I go, Ovies often tells me that there's a spot on the internet for everyone. There's something out
You're
there
right.
for everyone.
You're right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Just like there's a spot on the internet for the Jokic brothers. Remember a couple years ago, I think it was 2021. There was an incident between the Heat and the Nuggets, and Jokic got into it with the Heat, and everybody was all worked up. And I think it was Morris's brother got on Twitter to say something about what happened, and then the Jokic brothers got on Twitter as a joint account, and they're like, "You can come see us about that." Like this is clearly not people you want to mess with. They are about that life. Jokic is about that life, which is something that the Phoenix Suns owner apparently did not realize, as he wanted to hold on to the ball in the second quarter. And Jokic wanted that ball back to try to take advantage of essentially a man advantage in basketball. Inbound that ball real quick. Let's go. But the owner, Matt Ishibia, was not letting that ball go. So he gets up. Jokic takes that ball. And the owner of the Suns did not like this. Kind of like fought him off. Jokic gives him a very light elbow, man, a very light elbow, and he flops. And I'm like, man, that was a really good flop. I have not seen a flop like that. Like that's a really good one. So I'm like, whoa, like that guy. Does this guy play ball? And then sure enough, Joe, the owner of the Suns, who had a wonderful flop in that game last night, did play college basketball. He was a walk-on at Michigan State. So really, really proud work of a former college basketball player selling that flop to draw a technical on Jokic, who won't get suspended, I don't think. At least that's what the ESPN insiders are saying, Joe. But he did get a technical and did change the game.
All right, so there's two ways to look at this. If that was a regular fan who did that, would the NBA suspend one of their best players in a series now, Joe, that's tied 2-2?
Meaning what?
If it was just me or you it wouldn't be us. We can't afford to sit on the front row. If it was a normal fan,
yeah.
NBA player interacted with a normal fan physically like that, would the NBA suspend that player?
Does it play out the exact same way?
Yes.
No,
he was an instigator. The fan was the instigator.
Then the answer to that would be no.
Okay.
They're not going to suspend Jokic for that, or any player for that.
Yeah, that's my only concern. And yes, I have a Nuggets ticket. I'll just say that. But I would just say that didn't reach the level to me of, oh my gosh, he stepped way out of the boundaries of how you should normally behave as an NBA player. We saw Russell Westbrook after one of the games back with the Clippers have a verbal, he playing for Clipper now, have a verbal altercation with the Suns fan. So look, this series has been really good, and you're seeing Kevin Durant find a little bit of that old magic. I do wonder, though, and we've talked about this before, Durant can bring it 3 out of 5 nights. He just can't bring it 5 out of 5 nights anymore.
Sure.
Which, of course, is the marvel of LeBron. He brings it still every single time. So you see a little bit of the Durant magic coming back. I love Devin Booker. He's one of my favorite young players. I love the concept of I'm going to shoot the eyes out of the basketball and beat you that way. I do love that thought process from the Suns. But I look at Denver and Jokic last night with 53 points, just bullying people down low, like just old man energy in the post there. There's a cigarette break in there, I'm sure, somewhere for him at some point, because that was there's some old Euro energy in there, man. Fascinating. And then the Lakers, again, LeBron with the Warriors, that's been fascinating to me. And on the East, James Harden, man, 2 out of the 4 games now has really found his fastball, and that series is locked. You figure whoever wins that one, I'll say it aloud, right? You figure whoever wins the Boston Philly ends up in the final. But Jimmy Butler continues to do the thing, man. It's that Heat culture. Heat culture, baby. Jimmy Butler. Yeah, still he's a great story too. So great storylines for the NBA in the playoffs. Great players right now. And again, I think you could say the same thing about the NBA that you say in the NHL.
Mhm.
There's not this great difference between these teams that we used to see. This isn't the old, Jeff Ruland and the Bullets rolling
Yeah.
up on Larry Bird and Kevin McHale and the Celtics, or trying to take down the Nuggets of Dan Issel, trying to take down Kareem and Magic. The gap between these teams is very, very slim.
So you mentioned Jimmy Butler, and I hope that we once again have a postseason where people can appreciate somebody absolutely turning it on in the postseason. If there's ever a legacy for basically leaving it all out there or being a complete gamer, it is Jimmy Butler in the postseason. He's not somebody that you're going to obsessively talk about in the regular season. You're not going to talk about him like you would LeBron James or Steph Curry and what's his place or whatever it is. But in coaching, you like to talk about like your Gary Williams death rules, right? Like, who do you want coaching?
Yeah.
If your game is on the line, you want a coach to go and win you a game. I'm at the point now with Jimmy Butler. Yes, LeBron James in his prime is clearly an answer. And obviously Steph Curry's going to hit big shots. But as the saying goes, who's got that dog in him, right? Who's got that dog, right? Jimmy Butler is the opposite. Does the dog have a Jimmy Butler in him? That's where it's at right now with Jimmy Butler. And it was funny. I was hanging out with my dad, and we're at a 1-year-old birthday party for a family friend. My dad, rolls up with his Heat Culture T-shirt that he got at a game.
Oh, does he have one?
Oh, he's got one. He actually posted it on Twitter yesterday. He was like,
I am
he's
jealous.
got this Hawaiian shirt. He's got the Heat Culture shirt underneath it. I mean, he is quintessential bandwagon Heat fan that is showing up. And of course, the Heat are providing. I wanted to go back to the Jokic thing because that's going to dominate most of your national sports talk today. And we'd be talking about it on the radio one way or the other. And maybe it's because I'm watching Succession in its final season. Are you keeping up with Succession in the final season? Have you started it yet? Okay.
I have, but I'm not. The last 2 episodes, I don't know if you know, Joe, there's been a little bit of upheaval.
A little bit.
In my personal life, professional life, the last 2 weeks.
How's there? Okay.
I've missed the last 2 episodes, but yes, I
Yeah.
know the ultimate pivot point in this season, yes.
So there's been a consistency in Succession throughout, but it really does an amazing job making fun of like uber rich people, right down to how they dress, right down to how they dress. And if you've been watching the show, you've got Kendall Roy. He's the fail son who's trying to resolve all sorts of daddy issues on this show. And they're all trying to resolve daddy issues on this show. But what cracks me up is that they have a consistency in nailing how all of these super rich tech bro or like, galaxy brain guys dress. So there's this general reaction to what happened with Jokic of like, well, he's the owner. He's got to like, how did Jokic not know he was the owner? Think about it. What would make you think that Ishibia is a recognizable person? He looks like any other super rich dude sitting courtside with his little bomber jacket and a gray t-shirt or white t-shirt underneath that probably cost. How much do you think that t-shirt costs?
Gross.
Right? It's
200.
just a t-shirt, but it's probably like, made of the finest Egyptian cotton that was put together by, little worms that specialize in making shirts like this. Very artisanal. And like those guys are, I don't want to say a dime a dozen because there's only a very specific 1% of dudes who look like this. But when you're sitting courtside, all billionaires look alike, man. You don't know who's who. You don't know if he's a celeb, if he's a Silicon Valley bro. You don't know what the deal is. So how's Jokic supposed to know this? It's not like he's Mark Cuban. I'm pretty sure that Jokic would know who Mark Cuban is because Mark Cuban's one of the rare super visible rich dudes who's a main character on the sideline.
I was going to say too, relatively new owner. Remember the Suns' previous owner was problematic in a lot of his. Speaking of culture, and workplace behaviors. So it's not like this is someone who, like Cuban, has owned the team for, more than a few years. Although, if you think about it in the NBA, how many NBA owners off of the top of your head can you name?
2 of them are highly visible tech guys. You had Mark Cuban, obviously. He's on TV. He does shows. He does commercials. And then you got Steve Ballmer, who was a very visible face for
Clippers.
Microsoft, and he's the
Okay.
owner of the Clippers. And I
Does
would know.
Jeannie Buss own the Lakers? Does she actually own the Lakers?
Oh man, last time I checked, I don't think she actually owns the Lakers anymore. I think it's
Okay.
part of an ownership group at this point.
Okay, so Mickey Arias, the Heat. Only
Yeah, I
because
mean,
of,
Arias.
only because of Pat Riley do we know him.
I think most people think Pat Riley owns the Heat.
Is it Lubin or Loomis?
I don't know.
The guys who own them in the Warriors.
I don't. No. That's Oh, I forgot the name of the tech guys. Is it Gruber? I think it's Gruber. I don't know.
I'm telling you. Think about it. We
I
could probably name
the point is you don't know. Like
right
because with the NFL, you know who the owners are because the owners are main characters for every team because they actually are visible decision makers. Like I know who David Tepper is, and most people know who David Tepper is because he was clout chasing throughout the entire NFL draft, right? Most owners want to clout chase in the NFL. So now let me hold up I have to look up the Golden State Warriors now. I forgot who their owner is, but you're kind of illustrating my point that most people do not know who the owners are for the NBA. Joe Lacob. Sorry. Joe Lacob is the or Lacob. That's Lacob. My bad. And yes, there is a Gruber in there. I forgot. Peter Gruber's been around for a long time. He's a very prominent figure in sports and entertainment industry for the last 35 years, and he's a co-owner for the Golden State Warriors. But the only reason why I know who half those
own Sacramento.
No, the Maloofs were Sacramento. Yeah, they were Sacramento. Yeah. And then at some point you had Mikhail Prokhorov, who was the owner of the Brooklyn Nets, and that was only because people wanted to make all their. He's gone though, and that's the thing. I think most people think, "Hey, wasn't it the Russian guy who had like the yachts and everything else?" And people wanted to, the old commercial, "I am epic win." So anyway, I'm not going to fault Jokic for doing that. Oh, there you go. I like your.
Here's
Draymond.
Draymond. We beat him last week on the Apple podcast charts.
Oh, that's right. We did for like a brief moment. We did beat him on the app,
but he still has his titles. So
yeah, well, you know what? We have a YouTube show, so we got that going for us, I guess.
Gee.
Oh,
gee.
I realized, Joe,
that
you can ask Coach Joe questions on YouTube now. I didn't realize these are all things that I'm learning. I promise transparency. I promise transparency on this podcast and YouTube endeavor. And I did not realize that there's like a community function on YouTube where you can just like post, "Hey, do you have Hey Joe questions for us?" And people can leave comments and leave Hey Joe questions or any other number of things that are on there.
I did not know that either. So I'm glad you're on this.
Yeah, man.
I don't know how to post a YouTube short, which you're going to have to teach me as well.
Yeah, I am going to have to teach you how to do a YouTube short. All right, to our guy, Al Hood, over under on why do the national announcers hate the Canes questions. The over under on that, if I'll set it at 3, Joe. How many versions of this question do you think we had?
More than that, because people I actually watch the games with, shout out to the Swede. They really don't like the announcers, and no matter how many different times I try to say, like, they really don't hate your team. I promise you,
they don't.
I cannot get it through to them that the bias that you're trying to hear is just. It's kind of like me with Carolina fans. Okay, with Carolina fans, they think I hate them. I don't hate them. I just don't love them. So when someone doesn't speak your love language, you assume, like a Sith, the opposite. You think, well, they don't love me. They must hate me. No, they're probably indifferent to you. They're probably just trying to analyze what's happening. But, man, there were a couple of times where the volume was actually turned down in the room because they were like, I cannot handle these announcers.
I'll say this to your point about they don't love us, right? Like, I'll use Mike Maniscalco and Trip Tracy as a prime example here. Mike Maniscalco and Trip Tracy do a fantastic job on Bally Sports, but Trip, bless him, when he's talking about the Canes, he's going to advocate. I'll use the word advocate, not root, not be a homer. He's going to look at things from a Canes perspective. And when you spend the entire regular season listening to a broadcast and consuming media that is looking at things from a Canes perspective and as an advocate for the Carolina Hurricanes, and we're included in this, well, then when you get a national perspective, all of a sudden you're going to be a little confused as to, wait a minute, like you say, why don't you love this team like we do? I think it comes more from a twofold issue. One, it's more proof that nobody gives a damn about the Carolina Hurricanes on the national level, which is stupid because they have a wonderful head coach in Rod Brind'Amour that they can just kind of point to. Like, Rod's a star, man. Like, I don't know how much I can put it bluntly. He is a star. If Rod, let me put it this way, if Rod were coaching somewhere else, let's put Rod on one of the more traditional teams. Are you telling me that Rod Brind'Amour wouldn't be huge? Right?
I'll push back just ever so slightly because these are people who played in the league or followed the league. Now, you have to remember, and Rod said this the other day before game 1 against the Devils. Rod was not a glad hander as a player.
No, he wasn't.
He didn't press the flesh as a player. Now, he wasn't rude to the media by any means. But when you went into that locker room, you talked to Ron Francis, you talked to Glenn Wesley. And if you could drag Rod out of the workout room, or more likely you went in to the workout room and you talked to him, please don't misunderstand what I'm. He was never rude. He was never indifferent. It just wasn't his favorite thing. He was not that wasn't his thing. As a coach, we've seen a completely different side of him, in part because he said, that's now more of my job.
Yeah.
And the pregame speeches that you see and some of the other things that he does that you see, he's embraced all of that. He's evolved into that. So, yeah, I can understand maybe, I don't know his relationship with Keith Jones. I know they played together with Philly for a minute. I'm sure there's no animosity there.
No, there's no animosity there.
But again, Rod, the coach, is different than Rod, the player, was personality-wise.
So all of this ties back to, it's understandable that you'd be upset. Now, even I, like watching, the New York coverage, if it was the Islanders or the Rangers, it clearly, it shows once again that the national media is looking at it from a perspective of, well, where are the most fans, right? Sure. And we'll talk to Greg Wyshynski about this hopefully in a little bit, in that there's also almost an NC State-like effect happening with the Carolina Hurricanes too. I think hockey media understands they can poke the bear with Canes fans because Canes fans are active on Twitter. It's the old NC State Jeff Goodman battle where Goodman knew exactly what buttons to push to get people riled up. And I think there's a little bit of an element of that with the Carolina Hurricanes at play. All right. From Francis Ford Copulate. I've always wanted to say that. Now I can on the YouTube. Not having last change today, a major part of our problem matchups. Joe, this is something that you clearly talk about all the time.
Yeah, and again, with Jordan Staal playing the way that he does, and Rod's tweaked his line a little bit, so hat tip to Rod, the way that he's changed. And I was thinking about this too, that obviously Staal is a bit of a specialist at this point in his career, right? You're not counting on Jordan Staal to score a bunch of goals. I do think his production typically is up. His goal scoring and point production typically is up in the playoffs because of the way the playoffs are. The style of playoff play fits his style, right? But this gets me to the last 3 years in particular with Aho, right? Like, you have to take that personal, that these other teams are like, our top line cannot be matched up with Jordan Staal at all costs. And usually that ends up with Aho against the other top line. And we saw this last year in the Boston series. We saw it last year with the Rangers series. His group, whoever it is, now usually he does have Table. He doesn't have him right now. Totally understand that. Usually he has Svechnikov, which adds a little sandpaper to that. I get that. He doesn't have that. I'm not personally impugning his playoff career. But what I'm saying to you is he has to accept that challenge as a two-way player. And the way that he kills penalties, his game has grown tremendously in the last, again, he's 25 years old. I think we all often forget that Sebastian Aho is still in the learning curve of his career. So to me, that's the big key on the road. He has to accept that challenge. And in this series, it'll be Jack Hughes.
We'll get back to some more Hey Joe questions in a bit.
Oh, gee.
Joining us now from ESPN, he is Greg Wyshynski, covers the NHL. and sometimes gets into it with Canes fans on Twitter. But Greg, I think you get into it with every hockey fan on Twitter these days.
Why would
don't
I
you
get
not?
into it with Canes fans, man?
Yeah,
We're all,
you're rocking the bunch of jerks.
we're all part of the same gang.
I love it. I love it.
Come on,
It's actually something that Joe and I were talking about before you popped on. You know, Canes fans are convinced that national broadcasters absolutely love everybody else but the Canes, even though you're rocking the bunch of jerks in 2019 was a hell of a lot of fun. And Joe and I are just saying, yeah, it's just a classic case of when you watch ACC basketball and you watch a national broadcast, not everybody's going to quote unquote love you the way that you love your team. And there's a different job when it gets to the playoffs or when you talk about teams, right?
I mean, for the most part, I mean, there was obviously one discernible time when everybody loved the Canes, which was the first year of the Storm Surge.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when Justin Williams was doing his thing, like everybody loved the Canes. There wasn't a single person that didn't love the Canes outside of Don Cherry, which is how we ended up with this T-shirt.
Right.
But you have to remember that, like, and I say this as a 90s Devils fan, like when your modus operandi is depriving.
Why not just announce that you don't like hockey, Greg?
No,
like
well, that's what I'm saying.
But
You're making my point for me. Like the Canes' modus operandi is depriving the other team of joy. Like their whole thing is, we are going to make sure that you score one goal on our home ice. We're probably going to win the series in 7. Like that's the whole gig. So like it's a different vibe than you'd find with a team like the Oilers, for example, where every game is a circus. Like as a 90s Devils fan, I can tell you that when you're really good at defending, even if that defense leads to offense for yourself, the national or North American view of your team is not going to be one of celebration. It's going to be one of like, boy, these games are boring. Like that's just kind of how it is.
Oh, that's big Virginia basketball energy right there, Greg. Oh no.
Well, yeah,
it's a beautiful game if you watch it. If you just go to Charlottesville and you watch it, it's a beautiful game.
That's why I'm happy Maryland get out of the ACC. Like, just get us away from all those boring teams. Have us play Purdue.
Greg Wyshynski's hanging out with us from ESPN. All right, so game 3 was predictable in that the team that's down 0-2 coming back home, they're still good. You've got Jack Hughes, you've got a healthy Timo Meier. I expected that kind of response from the Devils. So the result doesn't necessarily bother me. I guess if you're a Canes fan, you can look at it in the flush it because the final score was ridiculous. But I actually took it the opposite direction. Like, the Canes were still feisty. This game was not over, despite the fact they got to be 7-2. They made it back 7-4. And you start to think there's a couple shots that hit the post. Maybe things go differently after that. But I kind of like the way the Canes responded, despite the fact the final score was a blowout.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bit of like the Devils opened the door and the Canes walked through it, though. Like, back-to-back shorthanded goals is a symptom of a reconfigured power play being very sloppy with the puck and giving chances the other way. I mean, Vanacek is not going to have a chance on some of those shots as they're coming in on breakaways and stuff. So I agree with you. I mean, they didn't quit. I don't think the Canes know how to, or I don't think a Rod Brindamore team knows how to. But at the same time, I felt that the final score and the fact that it kind of felt like before that Palat goal that it could be one more goal and this thing gets thrown into chaos was much more the Devils not knowing what to do with themselves in a spot like that than the Canes really kind of like forcing the issue, if that makes sense.
Greg, I don't follow the Devils on a regular basis.
Don't worry, nobody does.
But I actually did gamble on them at the end of the year. And when they had Luke Hughes in the lineup, I thought, oh, they got a little jump here with this young kid. And I talk about Sebastian Aho and Teuvo Teravainen and how there's a little bit of life there when those two are together, the life forces that are created. So why did I see Luke Hughes in the press box the first 2 games? And then obviously just talk a little bit about why he was up there and just a little bit about like how he maybe helped his brother who was pretty outstanding in game 3.
Well, he's a kid and throwing a kid into a situation like Raleigh where the pressure is enormous, not only from the environment, but also from the marauding forecheckers that you have to deal with when Carolina is on its game. Like it makes sense to not play him there. But that being said, when you generate 1 goal a game in the first 2 games of the series, it's pretty obvious that you need to find ways to get your defense more involved. It's pretty obvious you need to kind of change the mix. they were forced into it a little bit by Ryan Graves' injury, but it was the right time to put him in the lineup and see what happens. And what you saw was a guy who can impact play with his skating, a guy who, despite being 19 years old, got the green light to forecheck down low that led to that Severson goal. And you also saw a kid running his first playoff power play who throws an absolute lazy pass across the zone that leads to the Martinook penalty shot. So, I mean, you take the good, you take the bad. It just so happened that the Devils were good enough in game 3 to overcome a moment like that penalty shot, which in another game could have been a real momentum turning moment.
Greg Wyshynski from ESPN's hanging out with us. That's Joe Giglio. I'm Joe Ovies. All right, so Joe
Can't
gets up.
break him of the habits there, Greg.
I know I have radio habits that die hard.
That's fine, man.
I'd rather reset.
What is a podcast if not radio in your ears?
Greg, we literally called this new company the OG Live Podcasting Company because apparently that's all radio really was. We were just doing live podcasts. So I'll eventually get out of my reset habits rather than saying,
the only listen as a veteran of podcasts, here's the difference between podcast and radio. One, you can curse, and two, you can go off on it. Like, we could go off on a tangent right now about like Optimus Prime for like 15 minutes and not have to worry about hitting an ad break. And that's great. That's what makes podcasts different and fun.
You got 20 some odd years of habits for me to break before I go into not that I wouldn't go into a Star Wars tangent right now. I mean, wasn't there a horse named Baby Yoda this past weekend?
At the Derby?
Yeah, I think there was a Derby horse called Baby Yoda, which I'm surprised Lucas didn't, come after him since they showed that.
Well, as a member of the Disney Corporation, I simply can't laugh at that joke. So
no, can't have that happen. Cannot have that happen. So, all right, Giglio gets on my ass about my obsession with talking about goalies, mainly because talking about goalies is like talking about quarterbacks in the NFL. And I guess that would be another takeaway, that if I'm a Canes fan, I'm optimistic despite the score. You said that the Canes took advantage of the Devils having the door open. Well, that's been their issue throughout, is what are they going to do in net? I understood why they went with a young guy on Friday, but it was as predictable as hell what happened to him on Friday, that you got Vanacek coming in on Sunday. So what do they do going forward at this point? Because the young guy helped him in the previous series. Now it looks like Ruff's got a decision to make.
No, I think you stick with Vanacek. I mean, I understand that like he wasn't great, but the bottom line is that what they need out of their goaltending is not someone to steal games, someone to not lose games. Mm-hmm. And I thought that he made enough big. Yeah, I mean, and that's, listen, I wrote about this last week in my column. It's a league full of Chris Osgoods now. There's only one goalie in the playoffs that played more than 55 games, and that's Jake Ottinger with the Stars. Everyone else was in a tandem, or they didn't play enough games because they were hurt or whatever. And on top of that, like, no one is really turning to their goalie right now and saying steal a series. Like, the Leafs aren't saying that to Samsonov when he was healthy. The Panthers weren't saying that to Bob. It just so happened that he was like doing it in the first 2 games. And the Devils aren't doing that with either Schmidt or Vanacek. They're just like, don't lose us the game. And I thought Schmidt wasn't good in game 2. Like, I thought he had some, especially on those Kakiniemi shots. Like, I thought he had a chance to stop both and didn't. Mm-hmm. But in Vanacek's case, I thought he made some really key saves in that game, despite giving up 4 goals, including that one on Jesper Fast that was just like on a real tight shot. That was just a really key stop at a key moment. So I think he's earned the crease. I'd be shocked if they went back to the kid at this point. And Vanacek was the starter in the regular season too. He just didn't have anything in the first 2 games of that Rangers series. And then, luckily for the Devils, Schmidt gave him what they needed for the rest of that series.
I'm fascinated now, Greg. Where are you from in New Jersey?
From Matawan. I'm in Monmouth County, exit 120 on the Parkway, Central New Jersey. My colleague Emily Kaplan does not believe Central New Jersey exists.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, that's the thing. When you're like a snob from North Jersey, you believe there's only a North Jersey and then everything else. But New Jersey is filled with multitudes, man. It's like, think of Neapolitan ice cream. You have North Jersey, right? Then you've got Central New Jersey, and then you have South Jersey. And North Jersey basically is like a New York suburb. Central is like the beaches, and then South Jersey is Philly, basically. Yeah. So that's kind of how it works.
I'm from Ringwood, New Jersey, which is up on the New York State border.
So you understand
And
what I'm saying? Like
yeah, but
you
I'm
probably
40.
thought everything below you was South Jersey.
Oh yeah, yeah. At the
Yeah.
time, yes. But I'm 48, and the Devils were not good when I was growing up. And you had to be the hardest of the hardcore to like the Devils when I was in high school. I mean, by the time I got to high school, that's when they got good. But
Yeah.
even then, the die was already set. You were Islanders, you were Rangers. So, how old are you, and how did you come about to appreciate Marty Brodeur and the Trap and Die Hard John Madden and some of these other guys?
Well, I'm a Gen X kid. I was born in '77, so like
Okay.
we're around the same like era. You are a little bit more towards the bad years than I was.
Okay.
Like, I was in high school when they
I was gonna say 94, 94, 95. You were
yeah,
born.
I was like
Okay.
yeah, in high school then. So like, that you're right. I mean, essentially like they were the third team in the market. The year they won the cup, there was relocation talk. I mean, they were
Yeah.
like talking with Nashville about potentially moving there. Gary Bettman not standing in the way of that, by the way, which was, a point of contention for myself and the commissioner for a few years. So like, they were an interesting team because they were obviously one of the most successful teams for a stretch of like 10 years. Like they won the cup. They went to the conference final against the Rangers in 94, won the cup in 95, won the cup in 2000, Stanley Cup final 2001, Stanley Cup in 2003. Like that is a really great run of success. Problem being is that, like you said, it was not kinetic, appealing hockey. It was the Trap. It was winning with
No.
defense. It was Brodeur making 18 of 18 saves. And then on top of that, Lou Lamoriello was the GM, and he wasn't really keen on marketing the team. You weren't going to your local Ford dealership to meet Jay Pandolfo. Like it just wasn't happening, right? So the thing that's happening now, though, is that for the first time in their history, they have a star. Like Jack Hughes is not only one of the best players in the league on both sides of the ice, and like compelling and fun every time he touches the puck, and he's got an unfiltered personality off the ice. Like he is legitimately a star. Where my daughter is turning 13. She's gone to Devils games before, but now she follows the team because of Hughes. Like because he looks like Timothy Chalamet. So like it's like a whole thing that they've never had before, where they've had this like kind of marquee star both in personality and in play. And he comes at a time when the style of play for the Devils, although they can still shut you down defensively, as the Rangers found out, is very much like go, score off the rush kind of hockey. So the fandom and the excitement that they're creating now is something they've never had before.
I feel like if we could take some footage of this series and go back to 2002 and show the Devils and the Canes. Hey guys, you guys are in 22 years, you guys 21 years, you guys are going to play again, but it's not going to look anything like this.
Yeah.
What is
back
this
in 2002,
sorcery?
they're going to be looking at the video going, that's a 2-line pass. That's a 2-line pass.
There are rule changes.
What
There
is
are rule
this?
changes.
Why do you have to go touch the puck to ice it? I don't understand.
Yeah, right. What's a Kraken?
Who thought this was a good idea?
A trapezoid. What is that?
No, you're right though, because I mean, like it's a different style of hockey, and it's it's better. I mean, listen, there's no doubt that the rules changes that they affected after the canceled season are one of the reasons we are where we are right now, where teams had to start gearing up towards playing a faster style. The salary cap decreased the number of like goons and pylons you saw down the lineup, because now you need cheap labor, and cheap labor usually means kids that are making the league minimum, and they don't know how to defend, but they know how to score. Like there's a whole trickle down effect that's happened since 2005 as to why we have the hockey that we have now. And we're all obviously of a certain age. There's not lies told there, and we all remember hockey being a certain way. And sometimes it's a challenge for fans that grew up with the NHL being more defensive and bloody and bludgeoning to accept what the product looks like today, and have the NHL point at something and be like, that's a rivalry, and you're like, no, it's not. Detroit, Colorado is a rivalry. That's what it looks like. And so we've had to kind of like modulate our brains a little bit to figure out what's great about the current product. And there's a lot that's great about the current product, so long as we don't try to compare it to something that doesn't exist anymore.
We'll close on this, Greg, and we appreciate the time, man. Toronto understands that just because you win a series doesn't mean it's over, right? Like we did it. We finally did it. And oh crap, we're about to get swept.
Well,
what is happening?
I don't blame them, and I don't blame their fans, man. Like, that you've been told forever that if you win your first round series, away you go. Like,
Right.
wind in your sails, the monkey's off your back, like you're going to win the cup. And then on top of that, Florida clears the road of the one team you're worried about, which is Boston. One, because they're great, allegedly. And then two, because like every time you see the smoked bee, you poop your pants. So like, that happens. And now you're feeling really good about yourself, but you don't realize that the Panthers are the Bruins. Like, they're a team that is physical and north-south and with talented players and a guy in Barkov who basically does like Bergeron things. Bobrovsky has 2 great games. Now all of a sudden they're getting goaltending. Like, they were a really good hockey team. And you're seeing the Leafs once again kind of wilt under the spotlight. And I didn't see a lot of the game last night because I was covering the Devils game, but and then I was actually on the subway for Reinhardt's game winner. But like, the sense I get is that once again, it's blown opportunities. It's your big guns not firing at the right time, and it became kind of the same old story for them. But again, like, it's the worst way for the Leafs to lose, which is that they win their first playoff series since 2004. There's obviously progress made, and then you go out as meekly as possible in the second round, and so now you have to kind of like, their GM isn't signed beyond this year, like their coach is in what's going to happen with him. Do you now look at this as progress? Do you look at it as false hope? I mean, I don't know what you do. It's the worst thing to happen for Toronto because like you had playoff success, but you still have a lot of question marks about what it means, and that's tough. That's a tough place for them to be.
Greg Wyshynski, ESPN, NHL. Hey, man, we appreciate it. Thanks for being a guest on this new whatever venture we're doing right now. I mean, we got nowhere else to go, so we might as well keep this thing going. Appreciate it, man.
Anytime, man. Like, don't worry about a thing, man. There's a lot of, as long as they keep on making erectile dysfunction pills, there's going to be podcasts. So you guys are in good shape.
Hey, we got gambling coming our way in January.
And gambling too, right?
Gambling, baby. Let's go.
Brothers. If you could punch in a Hughes Brothers both score parlay for me, I would appreciate it.
Will do.
Thanks, Greg. That's Greg Wyshynski from ESPN. I am confused by. Wait a minute. Can you control the thing?
Oh yeah,
you can control the thing.
Look at us.
Oh, see, I don't know if I like that. So for the all right, so as we're figuring all these
things, work in, man.
No. Okay, well, we have to work on some Photoshop skills here. But I got some people that were working on some things, working on graphics. So I guess we could do a little housekeeping here before we continue on with some Hey Joe questions and the rest of the show. So we're using StreamYard as a way to record these things, both the video and the audio. And we've been used to, I mean, when I was doing ACC Panic Room, I was using StreamYard. It was what the station was using. Joe, you were using StreamYard to record a lot of pack therapy stuff. Yeah. So pretty familiar with, it's easy to use. It makes a lot of things. And then I had finally tinkered around. Like, I know how to like load audio into this thing. We can put video clips in this thing. There's all sorts of tiers that I'll probably upgrade to by the time we get to ACC kickoff, because I'm going to need second camera control, right? And we could have a space here relatively soon too, which would require another camera control, right? So Giglio was working on some graphics, and I mean,
why are you breaking my heart now?
I mean, I'm not breaking your heart. I'm just saying it's kind of like, let me put it this way. It fits with the sort of slapdash copy paste nature of what we're doing these days. Oh, look at that. You got a little Canes thing.
I took the picture. I was very proud of myself. I went over to our entrance on the east side of the building, and I'm like, hey, man, we got to build up our little archives here. So let me
I do find it funny. I guess it takes a while to take a sign down. But no,
they did.
Oh, they did finally?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it was there for the first game.
Are we talking about the Panthers? Are we going to talk about how the Red Rifle might be the starting quarterback, I've been told, by Scott Fitterer?
Look at you. So you just slapped a Panthers logo on that thing?
Yeah, I actually used their real logo.
Okay.
I mean, they're not going to get mad at us for using their real logo.
No, they're not going to get mad. They're not going to get mad for using that. So again, transparency, right? So I went and visited.
And look, man, in fairness, it was mostly for our friends at Mosquito Party Festival, because I wanted to show them, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is how our ads are going to be. Speaking of transparency, hey man, we're trying to get those ads to be native. We are Howard Stern snappling these ads because we know you're out there skipping. We know what you're doing on the podcast, and we want to get around that. So again, big shouts to our friends, Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority. Go check them out, bugsbite.com.
They might be,
now we're back.
now we're back to this, and I can control it too. They might be skipping this part of it. So we've got enough donations to cover the cost for some equipment. So appreciate everybody who's gone through Red Circle and donated to the show. And we've got that covered. We also, again, much like how it was on the air, you help us out. You do cool things with us. You know, in that case, it was listening. In this case, downloading the podcast, watching on YouTube, everything else. We in turn do some cool things for you. So are you going to gift? Do I have this right, Joe? Are you going to gift a Sunday ticket package?
Yes. There's a way to do this where we add comments.
What are you trying to do?
How do I put my own comment in here for us?
All right. See, all right. Now we're doing okay. Now we have a problem here. What you want to do is
I just want to put our email up.
Yeah, let's go into
so people can text the word football to our email. Yes, we are going to give away an NFL Sunday ticket. It's on YouTube this year, our new home, YouTube. So I want to give away a Sunday ticket because, of course, who doesn't want a Sunday ticket? And in years past, if you don't know, you had to have DirecTV to have a Sunday ticket. Well, now with YouTube, while it is cheaper if you get a Sunday ticket and you have YouTube, you can still get it a la carte. So either way, we're going to hook up the winner of our contest with a NFL Sunday ticket subscription. Here's the catch. You need to email the word football to our email address, which is the OG Goes Digital @gmail.com. Again, that is the OG Goes Digital @gmail.com. Then we are going to, out of those emails, randomly, we will pick 3 people. 3. Those 3 people will then meet us at the Raleigh Times. Okay, there it is. They'll meet us at the Raleigh Times. We're going to play life-size Jenga at the Raleigh Times. The last person to make a successful move of those 3 is going to win the NFL Sunday ticket, thanks to us at the OG, the OG Live Podcasting Company, and our friends at Empire Eats. Empire Eats, Greg Hayden owns the Raleigh Times, hence the contest. So email the word football to our email, which is the OG Goes Digital @gmail.com. We're going to do that the last week of May, Joe.
Okay.
So next week we'll pick next week's 3 shows. We will pick 3 random winners. We will contact those winners, and then in the last week of May we'll meet at a time that everyone can. Raleigh Times, play the life-size Jenga, give away the Sunday ticket. How's that for our first contest?
I like it. You've been wanting to do this. You've been wanting to do this Jenga thing for a long time, and I finally figured out. Oh yes, it's called banners, and I can type in email football to the OG.
Oh, look at that! You should have told me that.
And I can make it scroll. You could even make it scroll.
Yeah, it looks great.
Make a little dynamic thing. All right, I'm going to go ahead and hide that and go back to what we were doing. All right, so we'll get through some more Hey Joe questions here. And apparently we'll get to a golfer that will be my new favorite golfer. Yeah. Let's answer a question from David on Twitter. Hey, Joe, do you think all these state fans pushing for Elliott Avent to go will change their mind and want him to coach for life if they beat Carolina? Yeah, it looks like, I will admit, and we'll have to catch up with our friend Darren Vaught of the ACC Baseball Etc. podcast about what exactly is going on over at NC State. But it's not good, Joe. Shout out to Wake Forest, who's now #1. This late into the season. That's like a first for them. On the other hand, NC State's been on the wrong side of the trend.
A team outside of the SEC is not #1. Maybe you're #1 compared to everybody else, but the SEC will produce the national champion in baseball just as they pretty much do every single year. Wake is having an outstanding season.
They are. They absolutely are.
They've done a great job in building up what they're doing. NC State actually has a pretty good team. Their top 2 pitchers entered the year injured and coming off of surgery, which is obviously problematic. But if you look at their run differential, it's actually pretty good, which I believe in run differential, point differential, goal differential. But baseball's a weird game, and I will obviously not tolerate any slander of Elliott Avent on this program. So No, he's not. That no,
He's
Mm-mm.
it's
That's not a
it's
thing.
okay to be upset. It's okay to be frustrated,
Oh,
but the
nobody's
response to
more
these
frustrated than he
right
is.
the response to this is we have to have some understanding that not everything related to an off season means well the coach has to go.
Correct.
Okay, that's not the solution, especially when Elliot Avent, more so than any other coach in the ACC, is maximizing the most he can out of a program that doesn't have a ton of money. I think that's the one part that, at least my understanding when it comes
Yeah.
to college baseball, you look at the SEC and all the money that is flowing through that conference. There's also a want to factor in SEC baseball in towns where it's the only game in town,
Yeah.
right? Like people,
Mississippi
I think,
State, Joe.
right. Mississippi State has this incredible facility. I've seen pictures of it. I've seen it on TV. It is outstanding, but that's what they want. And there's money that goes behind that, Joe.
Yeah, Mississippi State, I was going to tell you, just fired their pitching coach, Scott Foxhall. They won the national championship 2 years ago, Joe.
Yeah.
Like,
different expectations, man.
it's
different
wild.
expectations.
It's wild. And I remember
it just means more.
It does. I remember NC State going to ECU for a regional round. ECU's got an unbelievable stadium. I don't know if you've ever been up there. It's an unbelievable environment. And I remember Boo Corrigan getting up there for the first time and being like, wow. And Campbell's got a great facility. And you look at some of these things and you go, uh-oh, they're playing this thing left-handed. And, of course, the pandemic year, for instance, the year that Mississippi State won 2 years ago, NC State kind of sort of beat the best team in the tournament twice and then was, set home. So,
all right, we got one from Nick.
Yeah.
If you were a teacher and you go on a field trip to the zoo with first graders that gets back to school at 4:00, followed by going to game 5 for the Canes, does that sound like a great idea? Asking for a teacher. Hey, man, you got to do what you got to do. If you're about that hockey life, you are about that hockey life.
I'm assuming this is the zoo in Ashboro, which
Yes.
I enjoyed tremendously. But I believe it was our old friend Brian Lord that I explained to. Do not get caught in Africa and then have to walk back to the other side of the parking lot. That is not what you want to do. You will not make it to game 5.
No.
So make sure you have a little bit of patience because you'll be with little people. Of course, you have that already. But make sure that you get on that little tram trolley thing and don't try to hoof it. Don't be a hero with either James or Jackson on your shoulders. I made that walk and I was like, no, I can do it.
Yeah. I've done that.
Spoiler. Spoiler, Joe.
Spoiler alert.
I went home and slept.
We've all been in a situation where the kids are old enough to walk and not need a stroller, right? Now, normalize a stroller for larger kids is what I'm saying. Like it's not like why is that first grader in a stroller? You know why? Is because they still have little legs and they get tired.
They can't keep up.
They can't keep up, and you got to be somewhere. So you stuff them in a stroller and you book it rather than, as you said, you got to carry them. Now, my younger son was at that point, whether he's a kindergarten or first grader, was somewhat scared of heights to the point where if I put him on my shoulder, which is the easiest way to carry a kid, he didn't like it. He was like clinging on, he's like suffocating me as I'm trying to get going. So, and I can't hold him like I would a football, like when they were a baby. You gotta get that support right there. You can't do that when they're big. And it's not like you can put them around your shoulder. Like, women are built perfectly in that you can put the hip and you're going to go. I don't have that hip, man. Like there's just some secrets that are unlocked between men and women, and I don't got that. So anyway, I'm with you. Don't get stuck in Africa, man. It's the worst thing that can happen. All right, from Triangle Sports Ball, were there any Hey Joe questions you wanted to answer but thought better of it because of the corporate job? No. I mean, we answered the ones that we thought were relevant to interest on the show. And I wasn't necessarily worried about anything getting in trouble corporate-wise. So
I laugh because you legitimately use real Hey Joe questions.
As evidenced by the fact that I can now prove to you by putting the tweets on the screen that they are real.
I may have once used one real question because, quite frankly, I think I am more creative than the other people, so I want to answer my own questions.
Wow. Well, you're gonna have to create a burner account to send them to me
Because
because
you won't make any up.
I won't make any up. I'm not gonna fake a tweet. All right. I'm just not gonna fake a tweet. From Kinchin, what's the better sports fight? A NASCAR post-race scuffle on pit road or hockey players dropping the gloves as soon as the puck drops? No, we have a new one. I actually think that the new best fight is between an owner and a basketball player. And that creates situations like Mike Malone last night, the head coach for the Nuggets. But it gets back to a point that I was making earlier in the podcast, Joe, about nobody knows who these owners are. I don't know who the new owner of the Suns is. Nobody can identify a guy. He just looks like another rich guy in his little $1,000 bomber jacket with a $500 undershirt and pants that probably cost more than my mortgage. The point is, nobody knows who these guys are. And Mike Malone, this exchange cracked me up last night because at first Mike Malone, the coach, was asked about the fan interaction, and then somebody informed him, "Oh, well, that was the owner."
Still not really sure what happened. I haven't seen a video of it. I think it's crazy that Nikola got technical foul in that situation. He's going to get the ball, and some fan is holding on to the ball like he wants to be a part of the game. Just give the ball up, man. You know what I mean? And they deemed Nikola doing something that was excessive, I guess, and they gave him the tech, but I still don't really understand it.
Think the fans, the owner of the Suns, made any difference?
I don't give a shit. I mean, I really don't care.
And that's Mike Malone has the attitude that you need. I do not care. Has nothing to do with the outcome of it. All right. I think we got time for one more. We will go to our friend Jonas, who wants to know if we have thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy 3. You know how earlier you said, Joe, that, with certain things that have been going on in life, you haven't really had time to do certain stuff like watch Succession, like 2 episodes back? That would be me with catching up on movies and whatnot, or Guardians of the Galaxy. Although I'm behind, man. I haven't even watched Quantum Mania, so I'm like really lost as to where we are with the Marvel thing. Maybe I'll take your approach, and all this next phase of Marvel movies comes out, and I'll just watch them completely out of order before the big event.
Yeah. I'm confused without Thanos. It's like
you're right.
Geopolitical issues without Russia and the U.S. So I'm kind of glad that Russia's back in our life.
All right. Last story. You sent this to me, and I was curious about this. You texted me something about like, "Hey, man, I think I found your new favorite golfer, or a golfer like you could appreciate." Right? Is that how you placed it?
Yeah, Julian Brune shot an 83 in the DP World Tour. He's actually a former TCU golfer, Joe. And you might think 83, that's pretty good, Giglio. Well, you don't get a lot of those in professional golf. And then you certainly don't get his response, which was actually brilliant. And I'll just read you the tweet.
Well, I could pull up the tweet. It's here in the golf. It's in the golf story that you sent me with the headline. Pro carelessly breaks rule twice, loses 4 balls, and may have won the weekend. I'm like, okay, this is intriguing. And the tweet's right there. Like, missed 3 putts inside 5 feet, but laughed a lot out there. And I'm looking forward to my 7:10 a.m. tee time to play some more good golf tomorrow. Enjoy golf with the crying, sweating emoji. So.
Yeah, the first thing he wrote, though, was 83 today. I sucked.
Yes.
And I was like, I total respect there, Julian. And he also, the reason that he got the first 2 penalty strokes, Joe, you'll enjoy this minutia. Yeah. When it's wet, on the PGA Tour and other tours, they have lift clean in place, right? So if your ball's in the fairway, you could pick it up, clean it, put it back down, hit it. Now, when it's dry out, that's not something you can do, obviously. Mm-hmm. So the first round, he was allowed to do that. Second round was allowed to do that. Third round wasn't. That's the mistake that he made. But when I play golf with people out here, even when it's like bone dry, I'm like, we're playing PGA Tour rules today, right? And they look at me like, what do you mean? Like, I'm picking my ball up. I'm cleaning my ball. And they're like, oh, okay, if it's in the fairway. Cool. So I'm laughing because, also with the PGA Tour that I love, I've played at Sedgefield before the Wyndham Championship.
Yeah.
They have those stadium seating set up. And you could use that thing as a backstop, man. And then you get a free drop if you hit it. And I'm like, I need to somehow be good enough to play on one of these tours so I get my free drops. I get my lift clean in place. I get all these cockamamie. Oh, I got all these people finding my ball for me. Like, I could save 5 strokes easy, Joe. Easy. Yeah, I mean, now playing on some of those courses at
It's a little bit
7,800
different.
yards, it's probably not going to be great for me. But let me tell you, I need those PGA Tour rules.
I enjoy there was a conversation that took place this weekend because F1 was taking place and the Wells Fargo was taking place out in Charlotte. And I know I saw the field at the end, like, it was a pretty, if you're a hardcore golfer, if it's you, Joe, how things played out at Wells Fargo apparently turned out amazingly well. But I think it was Kevin Clark of The Ringer who would ask the question, like, what's a worse spectator, on location spectator? The guy at an F1 race who shows up in a jumpsuit, or a guy who shows up head to toe like a professional golfer at a golf event, right? And I'm sitting here thinking, like, okay, I've not been to an F1 event. My dad went to Miami. My dad went to the Miami GP last year. He was all in on that last year. But right now he's dealing with bone spurs and his travel is very, very limited. So he went last year. He dropped like $3,000. I asked him, like, what did that get you? He's like, well, it got me 3 days access, but I couldn't get to this. I couldn't get to that. I'm like, that was $3,000 and you couldn't do these things? He's like, yeah, if I wanted to have like the buffet or whatever, it was going to cost me $6,000. So it's pretty ridiculous, which is why I actually am okay with somebody showing up to an F1 event or any race event in a jumpsuit. I don't care how hot it is. It's a spectacle. I mean, if you're dropping that amount of money,
do what you want.
Do what you want. It is, and the celebrities are there. It's a party. It is an overall spectacle. And I also am probably a little more lenient on somebody wearing a tracksuit because you and I are old enough to remember that there was a moment in time where NASCAR jackets were a fashion accessory. That you had people going out to the clubs in the late 90s wearing the M&M's jacket, right? You had somebody out at night. You'd see the Jeff Gordon Rainbow Warrior suit, man. Like, that was a fashion piece for people. I remember when my dad bought a Terry Labonte Kellogg's jacket that he was, I love. He's like, he loves Kellogg's. Like, that's my favorite cereal. And I'm watching NASCAR and I'm going to rep the Kellogg's guy. So those
things were expensive too.
Dude, they were not cheap, man. They were not cheap, which golf attire also not cheap, right? But I feel like the difference between somebody showing up a tracksuit and somebody showing up to a golf event in cleats or in spikes. I've seen this. I saw this in Pinehurst. I saw it at Quail Hollow when we were there for the PGA Championship. And my general thought is, do you think that Rory McIlroy is going to spot you at the tee box and goes, "Hey,
need you?
This guy looks like he knows what he's doing. Hey, you want to join?" And you're like, "Stay ready." Like, "Oh, I bet you there was somebody in Charlotte this weekend that had the clubs in the car already. I'm telling you, just ready to go. Stay ready, all-stars, because you never know when Max Homa might need you to join them."
Yeah, the homie. You're right, Joe. I cannot retort to this argument. It's lock solid. You have won this case. Airtight.
All right. That's going to wrap it up for this edition, episode 3 of Ovies and Giglio. Appreciate everybody who has subscribed, everybody who's followed, whether it's on YouTube or here on the podcast platforms. Shout out to everybody who's given us 5 stars. That's how we end up in those Apple charts. That's how we end up in the Spotify charts. It's not necessarily about the amount of downloads. It's about people who are following and rating and everything else. It's an algorithm. It's and quality. It's all part of this algorithm, baby. So we appreciate everybody that's done that. And we appreciate everybody who's watched on YouTube so far. As of this recording, we're at about 2,300 subscribers on YouTube. So we've already met that threshold to monetize. Now it's just got to get the watch numbers up to unlock the next thing, and then we can start going from there and unlock some features and everything else. So again, appreciate everybody who has followed, subscribed, rated, and interacted with us here on this new podcasting platform.
Don't forget, email the word football. The OG goes digital at gmail.com. Enter to win our contest. We're going to be giving away NFL Sunday ticket, and I know everybody wants an NFL Sunday ticket.
We'll see you all Wednesday.